guess just give me a little bit of background on you.
Okay, well, my name is Shanice Johnson. I am the oldest of two and a first-generation college student. I graduated from Bethune-Cookman University and the William H. Bowen School of Law. I pride myself on being a public servant and have focused my legal career in public interest law by working at the Arkansas Fair Housing Commission, Social Security Administration, Center for Arkansas Legal Services, and the Arkansas Department of Human Services. I practiced within juvenile court, specifically within 10th Division Court, for several years. And as an attorney practicing with the juvenile court, I've seen firsthand how the different aspects of government impact children and families who are suffering and what happens when one hand is not working in conjunction with the other. And additionally, I've had the opportunity to speak both inside the state of Arkansas and outside at different trainings and conferences about the importance of utilizing collaborative processes to provide services, holistic services that are trauma-informed in the juvenile court setting. And then just some things that are kind of just unique about me as a person.
Sure.
I am a first-degree black belt. I played college basketball, and I speak a little bit of Mandarin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where'd you play ball at?
Bethune-Cookman University.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Now they're in, there's like in Tallahassee or in that general.
No, our rivals are in Tallahassee.
Oh, that's right.
We were like,
I'm just butchering all this.
we were in Daytona Beach.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in South Florida, so I always get which side of the state they're on backwards. Yeah. So juvenile court. Ooh, that's a different beast. I guess what are some of the key differences between the juvenile justice system and then say like adult?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest difference, in my opinion, between the two is the fact that juvenile court is more about second chance court. The adult system is more about retribution and punishment, whereas in juvenile court, the focus is more about rehabilitation and habilitation to ensure that those families don't, continue to be in the system as an adult.
What are some of the changes? Now granted, because I know you guys can't really like campaign the same way like legislators and executives can, but what kind of change would you want to try to bring to this position? Well,
some of the changes that I want to bring to this position are that I would like to implement and expand access to diversion programs that allow community partners to participate in court proceedings in a manner that helps us come up with more alternatives for our youth and their families that are before the court. Additionally, I wouldn't say it would be a change per se, but I would plan to ensure that the people who are affected by this court receive, regardless of their race, gender identity, who they love, nationality, they receive best practices with respect to services that are culturally appropriate to make sure that we're looking at them holistically at every case, on all facets. And lastly, I think that within the court system, we have a responsibility to utilize technology to make the courtroom more efficient and more accessible. And with the change of going from 3 juvenile judges to 2 juvenile judges, one of the things that I would like to do is utilize document assembly software to streamline the process of issuing orders to make it more efficient and do it faster. And then as a court administratively, something that should be also looked at is we get text alerts about things like doctor's appointments and here, reminders. And so I think that administratively the court should look at sending text alerts to litigants to remind them of court hearings to ensure that they appear for court, because, I mean, with self-represented litigants especially, when they show up, you get more done than if they're missing.
I guess piggybacking off that, with this going from 3 juvenile courts down to 2, I mean, that workload, whew, I feel bad for y'all with that. Is that a big issue though? Is just the caseload, and then you kind of mentioned, sometimes people just don't show up because, they forget or whatever the case might be, but I guess, how big a deal is that, especially in the juvenile system? Like just the sort of the minutia, the logistics of it all.
I think that it's a big deal that it's going to be reduced to 2 judges because the children that are coming into foster care, for example, are going up, and so as you have more cases you have more people to address and less people to help address those needs. I mean, there are time constraints, and so it's important that we try to implement things to be more efficient, as efficient as possible, but still tailoring and making sure that each family gets the attention and individualized attention that they deserve and need.
we've noticed, or at least I have anyways, that this sense of compassion has really crept into the bench. And maybe crept in is kind of a bad way of saying it, but it's on display a lot more prevalently than what it maybe was a decade ago. Is that something that you've noticed? And I guess too, how would you sort of implement that sense of compassion, especially at the juvenile court level?
Well, that is something that I've noticed. The judge that I practiced before with the 10th Division Court had a heavy focus on compassion, and I think that it's important. Like, you need to treat people like people, and not judge them by their circumstances or what brought them before the court. And fostering that, as a juvenile judge, like that judge is really the leader of the culture of what goes on in that court, because not a lot of attorneys actually practice within juvenile law because it's not lucrative, and some of them just don't want to deal with some of the facts and issues that involve the children that are there. And so by fostering that culture of respect and holding people accountable and things like that, you just get better outcomes, and people are more willing to participate, buy in, and feel like they've been heard and that their needs are being addressed.
Why do you think that people just don't seem to pay as much attention to these judicial races? I mean, they're very important, but they just don't seem to get the crowd moving.
Well, I think, from being on this campaign trail, I mean, people don't care about things that they don't perceive that will actually impact them. If they feel like their kids are fine and that, it doesn't matter, they're not as concerned, or if their kids are grown, it's just one of those things, out of sight, out of mind. And since we cannot run like other candidates, it's just like the things that they want to know that would make them care, we can't tell them.
One of them things. What do you think the role of judge and should be, being sort of a community figure? Is there a I mean, obviously you have to sort of maintain that wall of separation to a degree, but what do you think that role should be, and especially at the juvenile level, should be as sort of like community leader figure, kind of that aspect?
I think that, like you said, of course they need to adhere to the rules of judicial conduct, but I think it's important that for the community to see the judges out in the community to some extent and know who they are, because that's part of the process of having people involved and who care. And additionally, as a juvenile judge, there's some discretion, and they have the means to actually ask for more services within the court to help advocate administratively to provide services to children and families before them.
What role do you think the judges also need to play in sort of just, I guess, basic civics education? Maybe not so much civics, but kind of like, this is how the courtroom works. This is kind of the procedural things. If you have a case dealing with something like this, this is kind of the direction you need to go. And not necessarily giving law advice, but just kind of, hey, you have to file, whatever it might be for something kind of thing.
I think that I feel like anything that a judge can do to help move the case along quickly and expedite and ensure that people have just a basic general understanding of just, this is what I'm looking at this type of hearing at the beginning, and explaining just the process that, okay, you will have an opportunity to present your side of the case and ask questions and general things like that. I've experienced and I've seen judges do that, and from doing that, it's made the proceeding move a lot quicker than just letting self-represented litigants just do whatever and interrupt the proceedings and not really understand what's going on and happening to them. So it enables people to be active participants in the process instead of just, floundering about and let things happen to them.
Yeah, because court, I would assume, is pretty intimidating in and of itself already.
Right, and then in juvenile court, there's so many. In most other courts, you just have two attorneys, one side versus the other. In juvenile court, you have the DHS attorney, the prosecutor, attorney ad litem. It's just multiple parent counsel. There are multiple stakeholders that are involved. So you go from seeing a table with two, then now you're seeing a whole like a semicircle with 10 seats. And you're like, well, where do I sit? Like, where do I belong in this process?
Right. It's a different world down there.
Right.
I guess lastly here, I'm just a voter out here in these streets. I am one of these people that doesn't necessarily keep up with it, but I know there's an election. I guess sell me on Shanice Johnson.
Sell you on Shanice Johnson. Well, you should vote for Shanice Johnson because she's the only woman in her race, and we cannot afford to lose any representation of women on the bench, and we should replace a woman with a woman. You should vote for Shanice Johnson because she's the candidate with the most experience in juvenile court as an attorney. You should vote for Shanice Johnson because she can bridge that gap between the generation of today and the elders. You should vote for Shanice Johnson because she realizes that the time is now to implement the changes that are necessary to bring about the most positive change for the children and families before the court. And she is not the candidate that has allowed 7 opportunities to run for juvenile judge over the course of a 20-year career pass her by before being concerned about the issues that these families are facing. You should vote for Shanice Johnson because she is courageous, strong, and ready to do the work. I'm not running to be Teacher of the Year, Small Business Person of the Year, or the person who has practiced within this broken system the longest. I'm running to bring about the most positive change to stop the wholesale warehousing of our youth without addressing mitigating factors. And the time is now for more innovation, more collaboration, and change. And that's why you should vote for Shanice Johnson.